one of our team previews here on NFL Spotlight, and joining us today to kick it off, he covers the Arizona Cardinals and is the co-host of PHNX Cardinals on YouTube. It is Johnny Venerable. Johnny, what's going on, my man? How's everything going?
All right, good to see you, my friend. Excited. Football's finally here.
It's that time of year. You could feel the grass. Training camp is underway. You're in the Arizona heat down there, and this is year 3 of the Monty Ossenfort, Jonathan Gannon era. It's exciting times in Arizona. I could feel it. There's a belief this team could definitely take a big step forward. If people who listen to this show, I know you know this, last year, this was my surprise team last year. They fell short of what I was hoping for. They were in first place at one point, but this is the year it could really take the big next step. So let me just start with this. What are the vibes so far in training camp before week 1 of preseason gets underway?
I mean, elite vibes. This team has had 3 robust off seasons. This past spring, they loaded up in free agency and the draft. They got a bunch of talent. And you mentioned that finish last year. They were 6-4 heading into their bye week and finished 2-5. And yes, Kyler Murray's got to play better. We'll talk about K1, I'm sure. But I do think it was a large, element of the depth on this team was not there to get through a 17-game season. This is a roster that had been gutted, stripped down from the prior regime with Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury. And really, I mean, we were covering this team in 2023, Ari. It was the worst roster in the NFL, right? It was almost expansion level worthy. So they've come a long way. They've hit on some guys. They need some guys to step up from last year's draft class, but people are excited. Looks like the acquisitions this offseason, Will Johnson in particular, I mean, they pushed the right buttons. Yeah, there they are this offseason to bring in a bevy of defensive talent. And it was a defense, by the way, that I think overachieved last year. I think they were roughly 13th or 15th in points per game allowed. The casual NFL fan probably couldn't name 3 defenders on the Cardinal defense. They had a touchdown streak at home. They didn't allow a touchdown for 3 or 4 games in a row defensively. So they are a well-coached team. The offense needs to progress under Drew Petzing. They ran it back with largely the same personnel, but people are excited. The over-under with FanDuel 8.5 wins. I think people will be very disappointed if they're not hitting double-digit wins this year.
I want to ask you about the defense, because you mentioned how they overachieved despite all the injuries, beside the defensive line being such a weak link, and obviously we saw all the additions that were made here this offseason. What have you seen just overall from Jonathan Gannon and the way the players respond to him as he goes into this year 3? Because from a national perspective, when he was hired, people were trying to bully him. And I feel like the players have really locked in with him as the guy.
Yeah, it's just, lack of a better term, it's just uneducated opinions out there because Philadelphia is a big market. And first of all, I mean, he was a historic coordinator in Philadelphia. He was beloved by his players, 70 sacks en route to the Super Bowl. And they lost to Patrick Mahomes. That stuff happens, right? In Jalen Hurts' first Super Bowl, they allowed, I think, less than 2 touchdowns in that postseason run with Gannon against San Francisco. So to me, it's like the Cardinals were very fortunate that he took this job when he did. And that might seem hyperbole. It's like, well, no, it's an NFL job. There's only 32 of them. Or you and I both know, going around the NFL, some of these jobs, depending on where they're at with their quarterback, their roster construction, the division, are not desirable. Right. And Gannon, I've got pretty well sourced, thought he was going to be the head coach of the Houston Texans once upon a time. The GM wanted him. The owner's like, no, let's go get DeMeco Ryans. He's available. And so, they bring DeMeco Ryans back home, and that's worked out for them. This has worked out for the Cardinals. Now, we haven't seen it come to fruition yet in terms of playoff bursts and division titles, but not all rebuilds are the same, right? Like this team, the lack of talent, it just needed a complete culture shift. You had Steve Keim, the old general manager, was consistently in the headlines for the wrong reasons, the falling out with Cliff Kingsbury. And here comes Monty Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon, and they've stabilized this franchise. And I've been consistent with my messaging. I don't know what the ceiling is with this regime, but I know the floor is 7 or 8 wins every year. And for a franchise that has minimal postseason bursts and minimal, division titles, you can't put a price on that if you're Michael Bidwell. Keep us competent, keep us in it. Let's try to make the most of Kyler Murray's contract, which I think they're doing a nice job of, and let's rebuild. And so you watch Jonathan Gannon. First of all, he got an A from the NFL Players Association coaches grade. That tells you everything you need to know. The players love him. His scheme defensively with Nick Rallis is very player friendly. They're going to I talked to Nick Rallis over the weekend, their defensive coordinator. Yeah, you have 11 starters listed. They're going to play 20 plus guys this year on a defense that's been completely transformed. So, I don't know how this season's going to go. I don't know if they're going to overtake, the LA Rams or the Seattle Seahawks to win the West. But people that are putting Ganon and Austin Ford on like their hot list or they could be fired, they're just not tapped into this market. This is a market that needed patience, and they're getting it in the form of a very, very commendable rebuild by these two individuals.
You mentioned before how the offense was not changed. The changes really happened with Monty and Jonathan this offseason. Were on the defensive side of the ball. They added Josh Sweat. They added Dalvin Tomlinson. They brought back a fan favorite in Calais Campbell. They drafted Walter Nolan, drafted Will Johnson, who fell to them. What have you seen from those guys so far here in training camp? Do you feel the difference of adding those type of veterans, the young guys, and what have you seen from them? Just could you see that being such a big impact of the year for the defense going into this season?
I think it would be a disappointment for people in that building if the defense was not firmly in the top 10, if not the top 5. We talked to people close to the situation a couple weeks ago. With the way this is trending, Will Johnson looks like a star in the making. They stole him at pick 47. The only way he doesn't succeed is health related. We're told he's one of the smartest players in the room already at defensive back, and that's a DB room with Garrett Williams and Budda Baker. And the way that the veterans have already flocked to him, they know he's going to be a big part of what they're doing. You're talking about a young corner who should have been the first corner drafted. Ari, you and I both know this. That is in the same form of a Patrick Surtain in terms of his ability. I mean, he had an interception off Kyler Murray over the weekend at our red and white scrimmage in front of the capacity crowd, and it was like, just blew your mind. It was a good route by Zay Jones, good throw by Kyler, and just an unbelievable play by the 47th overall pick. And so that's such a coup for them. That's what you dream about in the draft, of getting a player of that caliber. Now he's got to stay healthy, but we talked about like Miles Jack once upon a time, had a medical flag with a knee that never came to fruition. I was told before free agency with Josh Sweat, there were concerns about Sweat initially before the draft. He could have a knee. Here he is playing, 8 to 10 years into his NFL tenure. He's going to finish his career, hopefully in Arizona. It's like some of that stuff is just, hearsay. And unfortunately, rookies end up paying for it. But, speaking of Sweat, I mean, he's going to need to be the dominant presence off the edge. But they have so much depth now for a defense that was respectable in sacks last year, but you didn't have that guy. Sweat can be that guy. Another player that's flashed at training camp, they traded for him at the deadline last year, Baron Browning, who's only 26 years old. And people kind of scoffed at the acquisition. He didn't have any sacks. He fell out of favor in Denver with Vance Joseph. And Cardinals loved him. They didn't have enough time to get him ramped up. I asked Sean and Ganon. He's had a tremendous summer, and he looked really good at the scrimmage on Saturday. So somebody like that, Darius Robinson, who had his rookie season robbed from him. He had a hamstring injury. His mother tragically passed away. This time last year, Ari, he was their best front seven player, and they lost him essentially for the season in terms of making an impact. And then I'm not even counting guys like Bijo Ojulari is going to come back sometime off the PUP list. He'll be an impact player for them. Walter Nolan's going to be back before the regular season. He had a little bit of a hamstring calf. He'll be fine. Dalvin Tomlinson comes over from the Giants and the Browns. He can be a dominant nose tackle. Dante Stills has been a good rotational player. Like, the Cardinals have fortified their line of scrimmage defensively, whereas you look around the NFC West, what's happened with the Niners? They've got no defensive tackle depth to speak of. And this is what the Cardinals are banking on. The other, division rivals like the LA Rams are going old. They're getting Devontae Adams. Seattle's trading away DK Metcalf. They're all in with Sam Darnold. And here are the Cardinals quietly saying, we're fortifying our line of scrimmage with depth on both sides. And I think it bodes well for them in this division title chase.
One more person I want to mention here on the defense before I go over to the offensive side, it is Calais Campbell. Have you felt just the impact of him being back on the team, being that mentor? Obviously, no one's expecting him to become prime Calais Campbell here, but I feel like he's one of the best people in this game. Have you felt that difference of him just being back in the locker room, back on the field, back around everybody?
Yeah, I mean, he's just a tremendous player, a tremendous human being. Walter Payton Man of the Year, one of the greatest players in history of my adult life for this franchise. And I think hopefully he gets Hall of Fame votes. We were in Miami for the game last year, and he was the best player on either side of the ball on the defensive line and gave Kyler Murray, a run for his money and looked fantastic. So I have sources, Ari, that said that the Cardinals attempted to trade for him at the deadline. Miami fended them off, and a bunch of other teams called on Calais. And so I'm like, well, that means Calais is probably going to go back to Miami, or he'll retire, right? Played college at the University of Miami. And so we had gotten through the first like 2 waves of free agency, and I'm sitting there, I get a notification the Cardinals are signing Calais Campbell. I'm like, what a coup for this organization to bring him back, because they don't need Calais Campbell from 2012 or 2014. They can have Calais Campbell come off and give them about 30-40% of the snaps max a game, and then mentor a kid like Walter Nolan, mentor Darius Robinson, right? That's such a savvy move by this franchise, and he's still a damn good football player. So, yeah, I mean, his acquisition, Sweat, Tomlinson, I mean, like the Cardinals defensive line, which has been among, respectfully, Ari, like one of the worst units in the NFL, it is suddenly now it can go 3 units deep, and you don't want to do that with a guy like Nick Rallis who can take full advantage of their skill sets.
Calais Campbell last year was nearly traded to Baltimore.
Yep.
San Francisco had interest. Arizona had interest. Eventually, Mike McDaniel stopped all of it, but here he is as a free agent. Goes back home where he belongs, which is in Arizona. All right, let me flip it over to the offense. Before I get to Kyler, just the overall offense going into this offseason, it feels like nothing changed. Monty Ossenford was like, I like where we're at over here. Receivers, Marvin Harrison Jr., Greg Dortch, Michael Wilson, Zay Jones, Trey McBride, everyone is still there. No additions. Obviously, Kyler and James Conner. Was that surprising to you? Did you want them to maybe add a new face into the building, or what do you think about all that?
It was pretty clear early on that unless something like fell in the draft where you just couldn't pass up the value, like they were going to equip Rallis and Ganon with as much defensive personnel to flip that unit on its face, because that was the unit that was more consistent last year. It almost already, choose my words carefully here. It's almost like, guys, we believe in this personnel. Now you just have to go execute, right? We're not going to make excuses. We're not going to say, oh, we're a Luther Burden in the second round away from contending, or let's trade premium picks for an older wide receiver, right? Like, to me, it's like maybe a reunion with Christian Kirk could have made some sense because he and Kyler have such a great rapport. Could you have brought him into play slot with Michael Wilson and Marv? Sure, but this offense, which by the way needs to evolve, is so run dominant, and they love 12, 13 personnel. And part of the reason is, well, let's keep Kyler Murray upright. He was healthy for the first time in his career last year, 17 games. They have to find that sweet spot because the offense was too inconsistent down the stretch last year. Games at Minnesota, both games against the Seattle Seahawks, LA at the end of the year, like games that decided the division, decided a playoff spot. The offense couldn't perform, couldn't score enough touchdowns. So I think this is the franchise's way of saying, like, yes, we have a ton of top end talent, like a unit that has Marv and Trey McBride and James Conner and Kyler Murray should be damn good in the NFL. At the very least, like very efficient, top 10 in offense. You got Paris Johnson, a budding star at left tackle. They've got depth for days. And so they're doubling down on what they thought was true last year. More continuity with Kyler and Marv, which we've already seen. Marv's having a dominant training camp, or I'm sure you've heard. And then, Drew Petzing, who got an interview with the Bears last year, who has a ton of great qualities from a run scheme, pass protection standpoint. Drew, I think, is an excellent offensive coordinator to come in and make a unit respectable, like he did with Dobbs and the Cardinals in 2023. Like I've always used this example. Like if Drew Petzing went to the Jets this year, it's like, Drew, work with Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson and make it look like a respectable NFL offense. He can do that. Can he take a unit, though, with supremely gifted players and say, you're going from solid to like elite? That's what it's going to take this year for the Cardinals to take the next step. And we have not seen that yet from Drew Petzing. Doesn't mean he can't do it, but it's an offense historically that it's not been receiver friendly.
I want to ask you about Kyler Murray. Where does Arizona sit with him as a fan base? Because I've heard fans be like, I'm not sure about this guy. And then I have to remind people, like, finding a franchise quarterback is pretty difficult in the NFL. And I'm pretty sure Kyler Murray is one, but we have not seen it consistently. What is the story with Kyler going into this season right now down there in Arizona?
I consistently on our show, which you've been on, Ari, PHNX Cardinals, I use the example, like, you have to differentiate right now as a Cardinal fan. Kyler Murray, first overall pick, franchise savior, compared to what he is right now, a good quarterback that can play great and can play below average. right? But more or less consistently a good player. Like, if you embrace that on a team that's ready to win with a bunch of talent, I think you'll like the results. But he's not Lamar, and he's not Mahomes or Burrow and these elites. He's not Jaden Daniels from last year, and that's okay. We've seen guys like Baker Mayfield turn their career around, albeit with a different franchise, go to the postseason, win a division title, right? We've seen like guys like Alex Smith with new coaching, be able to succeed in San Francisco, succeed in Kansas City. I think that's how you have to look at Kyler Murray right now. And then if he gets to the playoffs and starts winning playoff games, then we're having a different conversation. But to me, it's like, I wasn't going to push back. And in fact, I encouraged, if they loved like Jalen Milrow or something, like they've earned the right to go do that. Go take Jalen Milrow. Go take a developmental guy. And they said, no, we're not going to do that. We like Kyler Murray. His contract isn't a burden, especially when Brock Purdy's making $60 million or whatever it is a year. Like, his contract is manageable. And so I know Jonathan Gannon here super close, like as close as you can get. They have a belief in each other. Sometimes it takes a head coach to believe in you, and certainly a general manager. So, like, I'm not going to sit here and say, like, he's a lock to be back next year if they don't make the playoffs, and he has a tough, 6 to 8 week period to end the season. But I'm also pushing back on the narrative, like, well, what else are you going to do? Like you said, if he got cut or was made available, he would be the number one quarterback available in the offseason, unequivocally. There would be double-digit teams that are like, yeah, we'll take Kyler Murray. What do you want, right? Probably, top 40 pick, potentially, and that might be conservative. Like, I think the only way that you're moving off of Kyler Murray, if you have an issue with the trajectory of his play, is that you get a rookie and you sit a rookie for a year, right? You do what some of these other franchises like Green Bay did with Jordan Love. And guess what? The roster is in a good spot. Like, you could spend a first or a second round pick on a developmental quarterback next year and sit them for a year and then say, okay, Kyler Murray, go have your Alex Smith career year. Go have your Aaron Rodgers career year. I think that's the responsible thing to do. And I also believe Gannon and Austin Ford, if it doesn't work this year, will be given every opportunity to go get a different, I hate to use the term like their own guy, but a different guy, because the roster is in a position to win. And so Kyler Murray has to meet that expectation at face value, and I think he will.
I think the fact that they are in the NFC where the quarterbacks compare to the AFC, where we're talking about Mahomes and Burrow and Lamar and all those great guys. In the NFC, it's Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott and Jared Goff. Like, Kyler could play with those guys. Like, he'll be fine. And I think the Cardinals will be fine as well. And like you said, if he was ever made available, there would be a number of teams who would be very interested in him if that ever happened. You mentioned Marvin Harrison Jr. before. I want to ask you about him. I know there was a lot of talk about him last year. Oh, he's not Malik Neighbors. Oh, he's not this. I think, like me and you spoke about on your show, he also was not getting peppered with a billion targets like those other guys, which is important to mention. What have you seen from him so far? And are we talking about, like, do you really believe that next step elite Marvin Harrison Jr. is on the way this year? Because if Drew Petzing gives him the chances, I think he could come down with most of those walls.
Yeah, elite is a strong word. I would agree with it, though. I mean, last year, there were times where it felt like to include him in a game plan, and this is not an indictment. This is what people don't realize, Ari, is it's not an indictment of the player. It's an indictment of the offense that they ran, where it's like, why is Marvin Harrison Jr. on a team that is struggling to throw the football, struggling to score touchdowns, not getting consistent double-digit targets? He only had 2 or 3 games last year where that happened, which is crazy. Malik Neighbors had 10-plus games of double-digit targets. Brian Thomas Jr. spammed the football on a bad team, right? Like, he's very cognizant, Marv, of these other players that were drafted behind him, and this kind of the ridicule he's taken. And like, look at the number. He's 900 yards and 8 touchdowns. He missed a game, and people are talking about him like he's Justin Blackmon or Sammy Watkins. Nobody works harder. I can ease everybody's concern right now. He's been the MVP of training camp. He's been the most dominant player there. He is unguardable. Like, he is not going to be like Malik Neighbors has a different game than him. Brian Thomas Jr., they have different games. Marv has size and athleticism, tremendous ball skills. Like, I think just like aesthetically, Malik Neighbors' game is more fun, right? It's like long strides, touchdowns, go routes, right? Whereas like Marv can do that, but that's not his go-to. Marv was going to probably have like 8 to 10 catches for 120 yards and a couple touchdowns, right? Whereas Malik Neighbors can put up those crooked numbers. So to me, Drew Petzing has a lot of pressure to make this work, because you can make an argument. If Kyler and Marv and Drew are all on the same page, that will kind of cure all the ailments for this team this year in terms of like win losses. How often can you say that? Like Joe Burrow would love that to be the reality if only he and his receivers in Cincinnati controlled the wins and losses, which is the opposite there. It's very truthful here. The Cardinals have a dominant run game. Their defense should be dominant. Their pass protection's great. The passing game has to be on the right track. So, I've been on the record. I think Maher's going to have about 1,300 yards this year and double-digit touchdowns. And if that's not good enough for people, that's disappointing. But for me, it's like his play this offseason, I think, is going to catch a lot of people by surprise.
Ani Ossenfort was on the show here earlier a couple of months ago, and he mentioned that Marvin has been at the facility every single day working on his craft, and it's been showing, like you said, the pictures, the videos.
Yeah.
I get it; it's training camp, but it's real stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
it looks like it's going to be some legit stuff over here coming up in 2025. Couple quick ones before I wrap this up. Is there a position battle right now in training camp that you're watching that is getting pretty intense down there?
There's a couple. Zay Jones has eclipsed Greg Dortch as the number 3 receiver, which is probably not going to get a lot of pub nationally, but a lot of people love Greg Dortch. I do too. I think Greg's role is not diluted, but he is more so special teamer, specific packages offensively. Like Zay Jones, I think, can get a lot of targets. Now, this team doesn't run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets, but he will be the guy. God forbid if there's ever an injury with Marv or Michael Wilson, like Zay Jones had a good camp. I look at the defensive side of the ball, like Will Johnson has secured a starting job. Like that's done. That's over. He and Max Melton and Garrett Williams are the trio there. It's a damn good secondary. Another player in the secondary, keep an eye on. The Cardinals took a 4th round safety last year named Taylor Demerson. His nickname is Rabbit Taylor Demerson. He had a dominant training camp last year. Dadrian Taylor Demerson, but he just so happens to be behind Jalen Thompson and Budda Baker. And like he was ready to play. So they have built-in packages with 3 safety sets. So what you'll see is Budda Baker likely being brought to the line of scrimmage as an enforcer. The Cardinals run a lot of single linebacker looks off balls so they can bring 3 safeties into the game. And then Jalen Thompson and Taylor Demerson. Ganon has done a tremendous job in his career developing safeties. He was a safety himself. Look at that secondary, 17 interceptions that year they went to the Super Bowl. Guys like Reed Blankenship off the street, like have become household names in Philly. Dadrian Taylor Demerson, I think, is going to be a name that a lot of people sitting back and they're like, oh, this is an ascending talent in the NFL.
I was talking to somebody in Arizona the other day. I mean, that coaching staff, by the way, is so young. I think Patrick Toney, their DB's coach, is the oldest one at 35. I mean, it's a crazy thing to think about, but so many young guys, and we talk about guys ascending. That also applies to the coaching staff in Arizona as well. And Patrick Toney has been doing a great job there with all those DBs that you mentioned, which is led by Budda and Jalen Thompson. Those guys behind them as well. Garrett Williams, sneaky guy who's up and coming here in the NFL. Last question here for you, Johnny, and thank you so much for doing this. As you know, this is the NFL Spotlight Show. We love spotlighting people who deserve more recognition. Is there somebody in that Cardinals organization that maybe we don't know about, somebody underrated, somebody underappreciated? It could be a player, a coach, an executive, who you think would be worthy to have on the show here at some point?
I mean, Nick Rawls, their defensive coordinator, is a superstar. He should be a head coach in the NFL at some point. He's 29, though. He was the youngest defensive coordinator when they hired him.
Crazy.
But he has taken that unit, and first of all, they wanted to hire him in Philly, and he wanted to come with Ganon because, of course, and so like that was such a coup. We think about great coaches, and it's like, yeah, it's not only what they do on the field, but their ability to recruit off the field. Ganon is such an elite recruiter. Like he loses Clayton Adams, their offensive line coach, who was damn good. He goes to Dallas. He's their OC. And then he gets Justin Fry from Ohio State to leave his job coaching offensive lineman at Ohio State, comes to Arizona. Fry was coveted by like the Bears and like 3 or 4 other franchises. Gannon gets on the phone, gets it done. So Rallis, to me, like I saw some Joe Blow ranking the other day of him. He was like the 29th best defensive coordinator in the NFL. Like if the Cardinals have a dominant defense this year, he's going to get interviews. It would be a gutting loss, but I do think he'll be a head coach eventually. He's mirrors Gannon's personality. He's super bright. The Cardinals were very fortunate to get him as DC. And like, I don't think with all their depth this year, there's any way that defense underperforms. They're just too well coached. Everybody knows their role. Israel Wolford too, their quarterbacks coach, super smart guy, did really nice work with Joshua Dobbs 2 years ago on the fly. Jacoby Brissett looks great behind Kyler Murray. He's going to solidify that backup job. So I mean, you're right. Like this coaching staff, to me, it's like the team is a stock that you want to buy because it's on the rise with a lot of young players. Same thing goes with their staff.
An ascending team. I've said it for the last couple years, and I think it's a team that is, like you said, on the rise. Last year, we saw glimpses of it. This is the year that I think a lot of people there in the desert are hoping it really, really takes off. And we'll see how it happens over here. Week 1 is going to be here before you know it. Johnny, I want to thank you for coming on here on the show, previewing the Arizona Cardinals season here. Everyone could follow you on X. That is at Johnny Venerable. And check out your show on YouTube, PHNX Cardinals Podcast. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, my guy.